Sometimes the simplest things are they're just simply the best, and they work really well. You know, several months ago I wrote in a newsletter about the difference in how somebody who does a lot of finishing builds and how somebody who doesn't do things a little different. One of the things that I dislike a lot is, number one, is I dislike fillers. I don't care for filler. I know it's a necessary evil, and there's a lot of good fillers out there, but I avoid them wherever I can. So one of the things that I do in the case of like this Bombay setting, here's an example of what I did. You'll notice that the belt molding is not on it. Or it's belt molding, some of them call it a transition molding, whatever you want to call it. Well, actually, here it is. And you'll notice that it's made separate from that upper case. And the reason for that is, there's two. Number one is that allows me to finish those sides without having to deal with this edge being tight in there. The other thing that I have is because I have a vertical grain this way, and then I have my long grain going across it, that sets up an expansion and contraction issue. Now, most guys will take this and they'll nail it on there, and then you got those nail holes to deal with. Again, I avoid it wherever possible. And here's one of the ways I do it. If you'll notice this belt molding, there's a lip coming out. And so when I make my moldings, here's what I do. This is my actual molding here, and then I simply, by putting it across the table saw this way and standing it vertical, I can remove this. And what it does is it gives me this shelf. Now, what this allows me to do, now I realize this is the case side, but we'll pretend. What this allows me to do is that it allows me to come in on the bottom of it and put an elongated hole and screw it into it. And if I have room, I'll tell you something else, I'll even go so far as to make it wide enough that I can put a little glue block underneath and screw it in there, so I'm not even putting a screw up into my end grain. Just to make sure that everything can move and slot, that side panel can expand and contract at will. And I have no visible means of attachment. The other thing that it does is that it allows me to finish this piece separate from that piece. And that's a whole lot easier. But there's actually another benefit. In my case, where we're delivering stuff or stuff gets crated and shipped, if something gets damaged, it's typically going to be the furthest protruding part, which is normally the moldings. And should they get damaged, hopefully they don't, but should they, the molding can simply be removed, sent back to us. We can either remake it, repair it, or do whatever we need to without having to deal with the whole case. If it's nailed on, then we got issues. But one of the biggest things is that to make this lighter and to make it strong. So here's one of the little tricks that we do. All I do, and that's exactly what was done here, is I simply make my miter and I'll take it and glue it together. Now, I'm real bad about just simply using some 5-minute epoxy to get that miter together. The reason I like the epoxy, number one, is it sets it fast, and the other reason is that epoxy contains no moisture whatsoever. And in a tight, and when you want a really tight miter, unlike wood glue, it's not going to swell the fibers in there at all. And you're going to get a really nice tight joint. The other thing I found is by putting down a little bit of wax paper, I can actually usually just push that miter really nice and tight together. And just the suction, just the surface tension of the glue, the suction of the glue, it'll hold the miter until it sets. But if I need to clamp it, I'll pull it really tight and then go over the edge of my bench and simply clamp it and hold it until the glue sets. Once the glue is set, then what I do is is I simply take a Forstner bit, and all I do is I drill about halfway through this shelf. And then I take a piece of scrap wood, drill it just enough to mark it. Then I go to the bandsaw and I bandsaw that out. And then I'll usually slice it into wafers, or I'll mill a piece as thick as I need. Once I've cut that out, then to saw it on the bandsaw, I just simply take a pair of vice grips or a pair of channel locks and hold it nice and tight and just slice my little wafers. I sometimes add epoxy to it, sometimes just wood glue. And then what I do is I insert my little wafer in here. And I want to make sure my grain is running across the joint to secure it. Let it dry, makes a super, super strong joint. Once it's dry, then I'll take a chisel and just clean up the top, whatever. It's not going to be seen, so it's not something I worry a whole lot about. In this case, where I've got an offset in the miters, you can see exactly what this actual piece is going to be going on this small bag. Now, if you've got a large molding that's coming out here and you're worried about this just being an in-grain glue, here's something else you can do. Simply take a toothpick and drill your appropriate size hole, coat the toothpick in glue, and put it in. Cut it off proud meaning sticking out further, and then when it's all dry, just sand it flush. When you stain or dye, it'll be invisible. And if you're going natural, you can simply just take a little teeny marker or a little teeny bit of stain or something and just color in the end of the toothpick. It holds and works great. And it works better than fillers. It's just a simple, quick, easy way of making a joint that makes sense and works. Nothing more again than a Forstner bit, some little wafers, and some glue. And you have a wonderful joint. And when you attach it to your piece, you have no visible means of attachment. Works slick. I'm Charles Neal. I'll catch you later.